I chased Ethan across the country for Olivia, my best friend. He didn't even look back. And then, 1 year after he disappeared across the country to be with her, I got married. The news traveled fast. Ethan was on a plane before anyone could stop him. The moment he heard I was getting married, he flew back from California. And now he stood in front of me. His gaze was fixed on the wedding ring resting on my finger. The usually composed, arrogant man looked as if the ground had vanished beneath his feet. For several long seconds, he simply stared. Then he forced a smile. A painful one. "Avery," he said, his voice unsteady, "are you going to take that off yourself, or do I have to do it for you?" His eyes never left the ring. "I'll buy you any ring you want. A bigger one. A better one. Just get rid of that one." The desperation in his voice caught me off guard. If this had happened years ago, I would have mistaken it for love. Now I only felt tired. The wedding itself was small. Just a dozen close friends and family gathered in a garden draped with white roses and warm string lights. Soft music floated through the evening air, while laughter echoed around us. Exactly the kind of wedding I had always wanted. Simple, peaceful, happy. My husband, David, was busy making sure everything ran smoothly. Every few minutes, he'd glance in my direction, checking whether I needed anything. He'd already asked 3 times if I was cold. Olivia watched him from across the table and smiled knowingly. "I honestly thought you'd wait for Ethan forever." I laughed softly, swirling the drink in my glass. "I thought so too. Does he even know you're getting married?" I shook my head.
No.
Olivia raised an eyebrow. "And you weren't planning to tell him?" "There's no reason to." A brief silence followed. Then she sighed. "I heard he booked a flight last night like a madman. The second he found out, he rushed back from California." I lowered my eyes. That sounded exactly like Ethan, though I doubted he came back for me. Most likely, he thought Olivia had vanished again. It wouldn't be the first time. My mind drifted back to a memory I had spent years trying to forget. Back then, Olivia had gotten upset with him after one of their countless arguments. She'd boarded a plane to California without warning. The moment Ethan found out, he booked a flight after her, right in front of me. I remembered every detail. I was curled beneath 3 blankets on the couch, shivering with a fever. My period had arrived that morning, leaving me exhausted and aching. The apartment was warm, but I couldn't stop trembling. Meanwhile, Ethan sat beside me, tapping his phone screen as he purchased a last-minute ticket. I watched him quietly, hoping, praying. Maybe this once he'd stay. "Ethan?"
My voice had sounded weak.
"Please don't go." He looked up. A lazy smile curved his lips. "Be a good girl and stay home." His fingers brushed through my hair. "I'll bring you back a present." Then he leaned down and kissed me lightly. A gentle kiss. The kind that made people believe they mattered. He tucked the blankets around my shoulders. "What do you want this time?" he asked casually. "A necklace? A bracelet?" I didn't answer. Ethan loved buying me jewelry. My drawers were filled with expensive gifts. Diamond earrings, bracelets, necklaces, luxury watches. Anything I wanted, except one thing.
A ring.
He never gave me rings. Not once. Olivia barely accepted gifts from him, yet every present she received was a ring. Promise rings, birthday rings, custom-designed rings. The difference between us had always been painfully obvious. I stared at his handsome face, his pale skin, his dark eyes, the familiar features I knew by heart. And I asked one final time, "Can you stay?" For the first time, his smile faltered. He sighed and patted my head. "You know how things are between us." The words silenced me, because I did know. I had been the one chasing him, the one who insisted on staying, the one who agreed to every condition, especially the most humiliating one. Our relationship had to remain secret. No one could know. Most importantly, Olivia could never find out. I was the backup plan, the substitute, the person waiting on the sidelines while his heart belonged to someone else. What right did I have to ask him to stay? Even though we lived together, even though he occasionally brought me to family gatherings, even though everyone treated us like a couple when Olivia wasn't around. None of it changed the truth. Seeing my silence, he kissed my forehead. "Be good." "When will you be back?" I asked quietly. He stood and buttoned his shirt. "A few days." A few days. I almost laughed. Neither of us knew those few days would become an entire year. Olivia's temporary escape turned into a study abroad program, and Ethan followed her every step of the way. I watched him walk toward the door. his tall figure gradually disappearing from sight. A heaviness settled in my chest. Perhaps he sensed it, because just before leaving, he turned around. "Before I go," he said, "is there anything you want me to do?" "Anything. Anything." I thought for a moment. Then I asked the question I'd been carrying for years. "Can you help me find someone?" His expression softened slightly.
Who?
"His name is Daniel." The moment I spoke the name, something changed. "Daniel?" Ethan repeated. "Who's Daniel?" "He's a war photographer." The air seemed to cool. His jaw tightened. "And what's he to you?" I hesitated. "If you don't tell me," he said flatly, "I'm not helping." I bit my lip. "He's my brother." Well, not exactly. Daniel was technically my cousin's son, but he'd always been my brother in every way that mattered. The person who protected me, the person who raised me, the person who made the foster home feel like a family. Ethan's expression relaxed. "I'll see what I can do." Then he left.
For real this time.
The door clicked shut behind him. The apartment fell silent. Slowly, I pulled a worn photograph from my wallet. The edges were creased from years of being carried everywhere. In the picture stood a tall, lean young man with a bright smile. Handsome, confident,
Alive.
and astonishingly similar to Ethan. My fingertips traced the photograph. A bittersweet smile touched my lips. Ethan had always had a terrible memory. He'd forgotten so many things about me. He forgot that I grew up in foster care. Forgot the stories I told him. Forgot the boy who used to shield me from bullies and sneak extra food onto my plate. The boy who practically raised me. The boy I spent years searching for after he disappeared. He never once connected the dots. Never wondered why I was so drawn to him. Why I stared at his face when he wasn't looking. Why I forgave him again and again. The answer had always been simple. He looked like Daniel. Not identical, but close enough. Close enough to make my heart ache. Close enough to make me believe, for just a second, that I hadn't lost everything. Ethan loved Olivia. That much had never changed. Even after years of her hesitation. Years of mixed signals. Years of refusing to commit. He remained devoted. Hopelessly. Unconditionally. And I loved Ethan too. At least, that's what everyone thought. But the truth was far more complicated. I loved his face. The face that reminded me of someone I had lost. 3 years before meeting Ethan, I lost contact with Daniel. Nobody knew where he went. Nobody could find him. Eventually, people stopped searching. Most assumed he was dead. I didn't. But a part of me died anyway. I drifted through life like a ghost. Until the day I saw Ethan. A junior at my university. 1 year younger than me. The moment I looked at him, I froze. Because for a brief, impossible second, I thought Daniel had come back. I cried that day. Then I spent years finding excuses to stay close to him. I carried his bags, held his jacket, ran errands, delivered messages between him and Olivia, took care of him when he drank too much, stayed awake when he was sick. Everyone on campus knew it. I was Ethan's shadow. Where he went, I followed. Maybe I spoiled him too much. Maybe I loved him too obviously. Or maybe he simply enjoyed having someone who would never leave. Whatever the reason, everything changed one night. He'd just fought with Olivia. He was drunk, heartbroken, angry. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his arms. His breath smelled faintly of whiskey. His eyes were unfocused. "You like me, don't you?" I looked up at the face that had haunted me for years. The face that reminded me of home. And I nodded. From that night forward, I became Ethan's secret girlfriend. If a backup plan could even be called a girlfriend. And somehow, that painful arrangement lasted 6 long years. Ethan and Olivia never ended up together. At least, not officially. Yet somehow, Ethan and I ended up sharing an apartment, sharing meals, and sharing a life that looked real enough from the outside. Sometimes, late at night, after returning from work or another exhausting day, he would pull me into his arms and rest his chin on my head. "Avery," he'd murmur, his voice unusually soft, "you're the best woman I've ever met." I would laugh. "That's a terrible line." "No, I'm serious." His arms would tighten around my waist. "You don't care about my money." I would glance up at him with a teasing smile. "I wouldn't refuse it if you offered." That always made him laugh. "But you never ask for it." Then his dark eyes would study my face carefully, as though trying to solve a puzzle. "You don't spend my money. You don't wear most of the jewelry I buy. You never ask me to make our relationship public." His expression would turn thoughtful, almost confused. Sometimes I wonder if you're the one using me as a placeholder. I would simply bury my face against his chest and laugh. Placeholder or not, it didn't matter.
To me, those 6 years mattered.
Every holiday, every late-night conversation, every breakfast eaten together, every ordinary moment, they became part of my life.
Part of who I was.
But to Ethan, those 6 years never outweighed Olivia. Not even once. One phone call from her in the middle of the night could erase every promise he'd made to me. The moment she needed him, he was gone. At first, he didn't even bother making excuses. He'd grab his keys and leave. Later, guilt began creeping into his eyes. He started explaining himself, making promises, telling me he'd be back soon. For a while, I foolishly believed that meant I was becoming important to him. I wasn't, because every single time Olivia called, he still chose her. And eventually, he followed her overseas without looking back. For an entire year, the apartment felt impossibly quiet after he left. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was used to being second place. But some nights, I'd still glance toward the front door before remembering he wasn't coming home. Not anytime soon. During that year, Ethan returned only once. At nearly 2 a.m, my phone rang. His name flashed across the screen. When I answered, all I heard was loud music and drunken laughter. Avery. His voice was slurred. Come get me. I found him in a private VIP room at an upscale nightclub. The air smelled of expensive liquor and cigarette smoke. Several businessmen sat nearby, but Ethan ignored them all. He was sitting alone on a couch, staring at his phone. Video chatting with Olivia. The moment he saw me, his face brightened. Avery, he waved me over. Come here. I walked toward him. Before I could say anything, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me down beside him. Then he turned his phone around. Olivia, let me introduce you properly. A strange smile appeared on his face. This is Avery, my girlfriend. My girlfriend of 6 years. For a second, the room fell silent. Olivia's expression didn't change, but her eyes lingered on me longer than necessary. Then a small smile appeared. Ethan.
Her voice was calm.
Have you finally moved on? He laughed. Of course. His arm wrapped around my shoulders. Why would I keep chasing you when I already have someone wonderful waiting for me at home? Someone caring. Someone loyal. Someone who actually loves me. His words made my chest tighten, because I knew he didn't mean them. Not really. Olivia's gaze shifted between us. How long have you been together? I answered honestly. 6 years. The smile vanished from her face. Without another word, the call disconnected. The screen went dark. Even Olivia couldn't hide her shock. For a moment, Ethan stared at the empty screen. Then his arm around me slowly tightened. Far tighter than before. That night, he held me while we slept. Or rather, he held me while neither of us slept. Around 3 a.m, his phone rang. He quietly stepped onto the balcony. I didn't mean to listen, but the apartment was silent. Every word carried through the darkness. I heard Olivia's voice. I heard the ultimatum. And I heard Ethan's silence. When he returned, he climbed back into bed. He kissed me, again and again, as though trying to memorize me, as though saying goodbye, without saying the words. His eyes never left my face. Not once. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. His voice sounded rough. Hoarse. As though he hadn't slept. Avery. I already knew. It's over. I stared quietly at the blanket. My heart hurt, but not as much as I expected. Because I'd heard everything. Olivia had made her choice. And Ethan had made his. If he broke up with me, she would finally be with him. How could I compete with that? I couldn't, so I simply nodded, then turned away before he could see the tears gathering in my eyes. A few seconds later, his arms wrapped around me from behind. His grip was unusually tight, almost desperate. Then he whispered against my ear. I found him. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked. My heartbeat stopped. What? I found her cousin's son, Daniel. The name echoed through my mind.
He's alive.
The room spun. He lost his memory after an accident. He's living overseas. I turned so quickly that the blanket tangled around my legs. My hands grabbed his shirt. Can you bring him back? For the first time in years, genuine hope flooded my chest. Ethan looked at me for a long moment. Then he leaned forward and kissed me one final time. A quiet goodbye. Yes. His thumb brushed away a tear. I owe you that much. That same day, he left. And this time, I didn't ask him to stay. A week later, I saw Daniel. The moment I stepped into the hospital room, I knew it was him. Older, a little thinner, a scar running near his temple. But still Daniel. Still the person I'd spent 10 years searching for. 10 years. The second he saw me, his eyes filled with recognition. His memories had already begun returning. And when he opened his arms, I ran to him. He held me tightly, as though afraid I'd disappear. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "So sorry you had to carry everything alone." I broke down completely. Years of fear. Years of loneliness. Years of grief. All of it poured out at once. The emptiness I'd been carrying for so long finally began to heal. Daniel had disappeared for 10 years. Neither of us wanted to waste another day. We became engaged only a few months later. One evening, while admiring the engagement ring on my finger, Daniel suddenly asked, "Did you love anyone else while I was gone?" His tone was gentle. No pressure. "But don't marry me because you feel obligated. If there's someone else, tell me." For a brief moment, Ethan's face appeared in my mind. Then it faded, like a photograph left too long in the sun. I smiled and shook my head.
No.
My fingers traced the scar on Daniel's hand, the scar he'd earned while saving a child. "No," I repeated. And this time, I meant it. Before Daniel returned, I used to dream about Ethan. The dreams were always painful. He would smirk at me, tell me not to flatter myself, remind me that I had never truly mattered. I would wake up feeling hollow. But gradually, those dreams disappeared. The 6 years we spent together began to feel distant, like a story that happened to someone else. Even Olivia occasionally asked about him. "Do you ever think about Ethan?" I would pause, then shake my head. "I hope they're happy, and I hope we both move on." I genuinely meant it, or at least I thought I did, until a chance encounter changed everything. A few days later, Daniel and I were having dinner when one of Ethan's college friends spotted us. His face lit up.
Dude.
"When did you get back?" Then he stopped, frozen. His eyes bounced between Daniel and me. Daniel looked remarkably similar to Ethan. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. But where Ethan carried himself with effortless arrogance, Daniel radiated quiet strength. One looked like a storm. The other felt like home. The man stared, then looked at me, then stared again. "Avery." His voice cracked. "Is this?" He swallowed. "Did you cheat on Ethan?" I blinked.
What?
We broke up. His confusion only deepened. "But Ethan said you were still waiting for." "This is my fiancé." I lifted my hand, letting the engagement ring catch the light. "We're getting married." His mouth fell open. For several seconds, he couldn't speak. Then he abruptly turned around and hurried away, already pulling out his phone. I could hear him muttering as he walked off, most likely calling Ethan. I started to explain everything to Daniel. Instead, he laughed. A warm, easy laugh. "It's ancient history." He brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. "I can't expect you to wait 10 years just because I disappeared for 10 years. His understanding nearly made me cry, because he didn't know. He didn't know how long I had waited, how desperately. For 3 years after he vanished, I slept with my phone beside my pillow every night. Every unknown number made my heart race. During the first year, I prayed someone would call and tell me he was injured but alive. The second year, I prayed he was alive at all. By the third year, I was terrified every time my phone rang. But I answered anyway, because what if it was him? What if this was the call? Eventually, the waiting destroyed me. I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and panic disorder. Then Ethan appeared, with a face so similar to Daniel's that it felt cruel. And somehow, he became the thing keeping me afloat. Being his backup plan hurt. Being second choice hurt. But walking away felt impossible. I needed that familiar face. Needed it more than my pride. More than my dignity. Did I love Ethan? Even now, I wasn't completely sure. But I was grateful to him. Deeply grateful. Because for 6 years, he unknowingly kept me alive. Which was why the accusation hurt so much later. The anger in his voice. The bitterness. The betrayal. After everything we'd been through, after everything I thought he understood, I never expected Ethan to look at me and call me a liar. He came to the apartment 3 days after the wedding. I heard the knock before David did. 3 slow, deliberate raps against the door. The kind that aren't really asking permission. David was in the kitchen, making tea. He called out that he'd get it. I said nothing. I already knew. There was a brief silence after David opened the door. Then Ethan's voice. Low and controlled, the way it always sounded when he was trying not to break something. I'm an old friend of Avery's. Is she home? David let him in. Because David was the kind of person who let people in. It was one of the things I loved most about him and worried about in equal measure. Ethan stood in our living room like he was cataloging everything. The bookshelves are arranged by color. The mismatched mugs Daniel had brought back from overseas, now arranged on a tray. The throw blanket on the armchair, the one I used to wrap around my shoulders in our old apartment whenever he left for the night. He recognized it. I could tell by the way his jaw tightened. You look well, he said when I walked in.
You look tired, I said.
He almost smiled. Almost. David brought tea. Set 3 cups on the coffee table.